I'm Monica Gibson, and today I'm joined by Greg McBride from Bankrate.com in Florida to talk all things US. Greg, US durable goods report is usually volatile, but this indicator of future business climate was in line with expectations for once. What can we take from the report?
Well, I think it was a pretty decent report, particularly when you consider that in context, the March numbers were revised up and pretty significantly. So taking the two in conjunction and also accounting for the fact that it is typically quite volatile. I think it was a pretty decent report, particularly after a few months where people were worried about the sluggishness of the U.S. economy.
Everyone's talking about the impact of oil on inflation, but consumer spending rose at an annual rate of just 1.9% in the first quarter. Walmart and Target have confirmed that their sales aren't getting much lift from cheaper gas, as individuals are more inclined to save than spend at present. What's the rationale here?
We actually recently polled American consumers on this, and we found that 40% of Americans, and that's more than double the next most common answer, 40% of Americans said that they were spending this money on necessities, whether it was groceries or getting the car repaired or that doctor's office visit you've been putting off. And about 1 in 5 Americans was saving the money. That was the second most common response. But only 14% of Americans were spending that money on discretionary items. So, to me, that screams very loudly the fact that, no wonder we have this slow growth economy in the U.S. when household budgets are still very tight, and anytime people get a little bit of breathing room, other needs quickly consume that. They're not in a position where they can ramp up spending on a consistent basis.
So the consensus for a hike may be in September, but others say the S&P 500 is at a record high. The Fed is factoring in a stronger economy and acknowledge that the unemployment rate is close to its long-run rate. So why wait? How does this train of thought compare with your own?
Well, from the Fed standpoint, they would rather raise rates a little late than a little early. They don't want to derail the economic recovery. And, considering all the inconsistency we've seen in the U.S. economy, that just gives them more cover to hold off and wait. Now, they do eventually want to get off of the 0% rate, so I expect we will get a rate hike probably in the third quarter of this year. If we get some more sluggishness in the economy, that could certainly be pushed back. But they do want to push rates up. As for my view on that, this economy is no longer dependent on those near zero rates of the financial crisis days. But markets have become addicted to those low rates, and it's right now they really kind of have to wean markets off of that addiction by raising rates slowly. And it's going to be a delicate balance, simply because the economy is not exactly firing on all cylinders, and household budgets are still very, very tight. The dollar strength has actually been one of the headwinds for the U.S. economy to start out 2015. But with the Federal Reserve so much further along in the game of monetary policy than much of the rest of the world, they're at the point where they're going to start hiking rates. Everybody else is still creating liquidity as fast as they can. That's suggestive of growth in the currency exchange rate, the continued strength in the U.S. dollar, and that certainly has its pros and cons for the U.S. economy.
Analysts say the S&P will probably tread water until the U.S. non-farm payrolls report is published on the 5th of June. But the unemployment rate isn't really the issue here. It's the lack of wage increase. So what do we need to see from the next report?
Well, a few things, and you're right. The unemployment rate really isn't the issue. That's the one that gets the headlines, but that's not really what people should be paying attention to. We need to see a solid pace of job growth. We need to continue to see quality jobs leading the way, particularly professional and business services. We do need to see more wage growth by a variety of measures, not just what we see in the employment report, but the lack of wage growth is really the missing ingredient in this economic recovery. And until we see that, the U.S. economy is going to continue to muddle along at this rather slow pace of growth.
Greg, great to speak with you. Thank you. Well, that's all from Greg and myself, but make sure you keep clicking back to Dukascopy TV. Goodbye for now.